Hey, it's Game Hydro. We're doing another Dragon Fever TD video. I'm going to go over a tier list of the best heroes in the game. Now, for this tier list, I'm going to go over the primary heroes, the oranges, the purples, and the blues. Not going to go over the red heroes right now. That's for a different video. Not going to go over the limited edition rainbow heroes right now. We're just going to go over the basic ones that you're going to be using the most throughout the game. Now, here is, okay, first of all, I'm not going to be comparing the rarities to each other. I'm going to be comparing them all to one another because I've found that rarity of the heroes is completely arbitrary in this game and does not mean that the rarer ones are necessarily more effective. In fact, the starting heroes can often be your best ones. So we're going to go over them in order here. Number one is Frenzy Chainsaw. So Frenzy Chainsaw is pretty good because you have sustained damage on segments of the snake. Now, the chainsaw doesn't really go too far at first, but the more you upgrade it, the further it goes. And of course, the golden blade, once you get it to level 6, each skill has a specific evolution once you get to level 6. And that basically turns it into a superpowered version of itself. Now, the damage is pretty high with this one. However, the area damage targeting is medium. It's not the best, but certainly not the worst. Frenzy Chainsaw, I would consider more effective in the vertical stages than in the round stages. The round stages, meh. The vertical stages, more effective. Overall, I'm going to give this one an A- tier. Now, if you want to rank the heroes, keep a tally of them. You grab a pen and paper, you can do that. All right, next up, we got the Ice Archer. Ice Archer is a DPS type that is much better against bosses than against the dragon snake at the beginning because it does not have any splash targeting whatsoever except for once you get level 4 and level 6's skills. So very high damage, no splash targeting. I would say about equal effectiveness on vertical and round stages, but because of the lack of splash targeting and better heroes available, I'm going to give the Ice Archer here a B+ tier. Next up, and as for the ones that I've got in my formation right now, don't really pay attention to that because I've been testing a bunch of them so that I can give you the best tier list. That's not usually my daily drivers. Some of them, though, are my daily drivers. I'll get to those ones in a minute. Shock Rifleman shoots lasers that penetrate all the way through enemies. Pretty high damage. Very, very effective on the vertical stages. Less effective on the round stages. And even though you only start with one hit, you can very rapidly upgrade the Shock Rifleman to be shooting lasers almost constantly. Just laser after laser after laser to do crazy amounts of damage. And then, of course, scattering at level 6, crit damage, crit percentage, very high. Due to the amount of splash damage and how upgradable Shock Rifleman is, this one is an S tier on vertical stages. On round stages, I would say probably a B+ tier. So overall, I'm going to give her an A tier. The Shock Rifleman absolutely kills it on vertical stages. Next up, and the Shock Rifleman is one of my daily drivers for vertical stages. Next up, we got the Slider Pitcher. Rarity goes down, but spoiler alert, effectiveness goes up. And each hero has their own hit points ranking, as you can see. So that adds to the hit points of your wall. Mainly that is useful against bosses, not necessarily as useful against the dragons, because when the dragon reaches you or reaches your wall, you're going to get killed in short order. So, and to me, the dragon effectiveness is much more important than the boss effectiveness. The boss is almost kind of a bonus at the end of the stage for the most part. All right, slider pitcher, hit points are low, damage is slightly lower, and at first doesn't seem super effective, but penetrates through everything, and the boomerang hits twice, once on the way up, once on the way down. However, the slider pitcher is massively upgradable to where you can throw more boomerangs in a shorter amount of time, more boomerangs in a row, and it doesn't take many upgrades for the slider pitcher to just be throwing a constant stream of boomerangs with no cooldown. Plus, you got this level 4 skill, which generates 2 extra blades on each hit, which is an absolutely ridiculously overpowered skill, on top of what turns out to be a ridiculously overpowered hero. Slider pitcher is extraordinarily effective on vertical levels. On round levels, slider pitcher continues to be super effective because the boomerangs will take a more circular path, hitting more segments of the dragon on the way up and on the way down. So slider pitcher with not that many upgrades ends up being disgustingly overpowered in both vertical levels and in round levels. So for that reason, slider pitcher gets an S tier, possibly an S plus tier. The slider pitcher, obviously one of my daily drivers for every level in this game. All right, next up we've got the Gold Medal Poisoner. The Gold Medal Poisoner is extraordinarily effective in round stages because she causes your hero formation to be surrounded by spinning daggers. So upgrades will give you more spinning daggers, faster spins, obviously more attack power and more crit, and the daggers can be upgraded to a completely ridiculous degree of fast spins and high damage. So in round stages, S plus for sure. Very, very overpowered. And you can increase the size of the daggers in order to hit more segments of the dragon at the same time. In the vertical stages, somewhat less effective. However, very good for warding off the parts of the dragon that are getting close to your wall, especially when you upgrade the size of the daggers. So in vertical stages, I would say this one is an A minus. In round stages, an S plus. Overall, we're going to go A plus for the Gold Medal Poisoner. Next up, you got the Blazing Shooter. This one shoots a stream of fire that does consistent, steady damage. And so even though the damage rating looks low, the overall damage done is extraordinarily high. Not only that, but the flame pierces through enemies for as long as it is. It's not that long to begin with. It only encompasses about half of a vertical level, but the length of the flame can easily be upgraded to encompass the entire length of a vertical level. Plus, flame count plus 2 shoots 3 flames at a time and does consistent damage to almost the entire dragon because the flames will take up so much of the screen. Kind of reminds me of those old school 90s bullet hell shooters where there's just ridiculous amount of damage and ridiculously powerful attacks covering the entire screen. So Blazing Shooter, I'm giving this one an S plus in vertical levels and an A plus to S minus in round levels. Overall rating, definitely S tier. Blazing Shooter is the second most overpowered one that I have tested so far besides the slider pitcher. So blazing shooter, daily driver all the time. And obviously gold medal poisoner, daily driver in round levels. Next up, you got the electric girl. The electric girl shoots electricity that hits a segment of the dragon and then bounces to other segments. Doesn't have that many bounces at first, but as you upgrade it, not only can you do area damage with each hit, but you can shoot more electricity and bounce between more enemies. And with lots of upgrades, this one can become extremely powerful. This one is equally effective in vertical levels and round levels. Not super overpowered, but definitely a good one to have in your party for all that area damage that you do. I'm going to give her an A tier. Equally effective in both round and vertical levels. So next up, we got the bucket shooter, which is another starting skill. Obviously, it's a blue hero. The bucket shooter does steady, consistent damage, shooting streams of water. Kind of like the blazing shooter, but without any of the piercing ability. However, it can shoot higher right from the beginning, and you can unlock more streams of water at a time. This one is really strong as far as DPS. The only real weakness here is the lack of piercing ability. So bucket shooter is a great skill as a starter, but as you get further into the game, you'll find that bucket shooter becomes somewhat less useful compared to some of the other ones that you unlock, such as the blazing shooter or the slider pitcher. So bucket shooter, I'm going to give an A- to B+ tier too. Still a daily driver for me, mostly on, well, not mostly on vertical levels. It's because of the lack of piercing, she is equally useful on vertical and round levels. Next up, you got the Venom Queen Bee. So there is no piercing damage and no area damage to be dealt whatsoever with the Venom Queen Bee. However, there is increasingly high levels of DPS dealt to one single enemy or segment of the dragon at a time. And then you unlock a little bit of splashiness later on with level 4 and level 6 with penetration added. So she becomes extremely powerful with those. But without those, the usefulness is kind of limited. Fairly useless in round levels because round levels don't tend to have a boss at the end. In vertical levels, she's especially useful against the boss and is a complete DPS fiend. However, I put more importance into the ones that are better against the dragon than better against the boss. So more damage and more scores against the boss equals higher scores on the level. But as far as actually beating the level, I'm going to give her usefulness is basically a C tier on round levels and a B+ tier on vertical levels. So overall, she gets a B tier. All right, next up, you got the heavy gunner. The heavy gunner fires rockets that pierce unlimitedly. That's not a word. That have unlimited piercing ability for as long as they last on the screen. The damage is not super high, but the hit points are, of course, extremely high. And as you have upgrades, you get more damage, you get more firing speed, and more rockets fired off at the same time. Plus, explosions at the end, etc., etc. Crit damage plus 1,000 at the very end. But there's not really much in the way of crit rate boosts. But still, I find the heavy gunner to be moderately useful and fairly decent if you're looking to fill space after putting your main daily drivers in. So the heavy gunner, I'm going B+ tier with. All right, next up we got Thunder Fang. So Thunder Fang lashes enemies with a lightning whip. Now, the real weakness here is that this has no splash damage and no area damage whatsoever, and the primary damage is not as high as I would like to see it for a hero without any sort of splash damage. You get higher crit, higher attack speed, paralysis, more crit damage, evolves into Thunder Whip, Whip count 2, Lightning count 2. So, at higher evolutions, I would consider Thunderfang to be more effective against bosses, not necessarily as effective against the dragon itself, whether it is vertical or round stages. So Thunderfang, I'm giving a B- to. All right. Bubbledream is next. So Bubbledream shoots out bubbles that bounce around and can kind of pierce through enemies. Not the same as the bubble attack in Cell Survivor, which this game borrows a lot of inspiration from. Not super useful in the beginning. You can increase the flight speed, you can increase the bubble size and damage, and you can increase the number of bubbles that you shoot, but nothing really leads this skill to become super overpowered. So Bubbledream, I'm going to give a B tier to. Beginner skill, and one that you probably will find not super useful in your party. All right. Burning Little Sun, low hit points, decent damage, shoots out fireball, throws Molotov cocktails that leave areas of burning that can do fairly significant amounts of damage to the dragon, and can do a little bit of area damage as well. The primary weakness here is slow firing and completely random targeting. I do like the boost of the size of the fire zone and the Molotov attack speed, and then potential to deal 5 times the damage. That power-up actually also exists on the slider pitcher and is very effective there. Even though it does trigger a lot of explosions, Burning Little Sun never really tends to feature very heavily on the final stats of any level that I use her on. Now, at the end of each level, you can, and whenever you pause, you can see which hero has dealt the most damage. I went over that a little bit in my last video. That's what I'm talking about. Burning Little Sun usually at maximum will feature in the middle of that. So effectiveness, I'm going B+ here because I do like the splash damage. I got to give her something for the splash damage. Next up is Racing Girl. Racing Girl throws a wrench that it doesn't really have penetration, but does have a little bit of area damage. Super high DPS. Super high DPS, but not really much in the way of targeting a lot of segments of the dragon at the same time. Pretty good against bosses. Low hit points, of course, and upgradable to be decently powerful, but still never truly overpowered. Racing Girl, I actually removed from my party pretty early in the game once I unlocked other heroes. So Racing Girl, as a car guy, I wanted her to feature more heavily, but unfortunately she's just not that effective. I'm going B-. And that is, and her effectiveness is about semi-equal in vertical levels compared to round levels. Slightly higher in vertical levels because I think her forte is more bosses as opposed to oh geez, can't talk English tonight. as opposed to round levels, and bosses as opposed to the dragons. All right, Sweeteners. I'm struggling to remember Sweeteners because I purged her from my party really early and forgot to test her again before making this video, but she's not memorable. She's really not memorable. There's not much in the way of splash damage here. There's not really much in the way of piercing. There is the potential to fire off more Venom shots in a row, rapid fire. That shot will hit multiple times per shot. So the damage, the DPS is pretty high. She's actually really effective against bosses. But against the dragon, doesn't really move the needle too much. Once again, not super memorable, although I am remembering her a little bit better as I'm talking. So I'm going to go B tier, potentially B minus. Less effective on the round stages, more effective on the vertical stages. All right. In a future video, I'm going to go over the best of the reds, and I'm going to test out, if possible, Absolute Zero and Hua Mulan and any other rainbow ones that may pop up in updates between now and then. Although those rainbow ones don't necessarily pop up in dungeons the way that the red ones do. So I'm going to be testing the red ones in dungeons in order to give you some good wisdom. All right, but that is the tier list of all of the non-super limited heroes. And that's the wisdom on what the daily drivers should be. So obviously Slider Pitcher and Blazing Shooter are probably my favorites. Gold Medal Poisoner, my favorite in round levels, and the Shock Rifleman, very, very good in vertical levels. But go back and watch the whole thing if you want my rating on all of them and my reasoning for it. All right, thank you for watching. This is Game Hydro. Please like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think. If you got different opinions, different experiences, I want to hear it.